When Luke Skywalker first laid his eyes on Darth Sidious, he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. Here was a man who had turned his father to the dark side, destroyed the entire Jedi Order, rewrote galactic history itself to establish a tyrannical regime, and was touted as the most powerful wielder in the Force to potentially ever exist. And when Luke saw him, he was a tired, shriveled old man in a chair. This had not been the man that he had expected, but very soon he would feel the true power of the Emperor. And when he tasted Sidious's lightning, he finally understood. And had it not been for his father, it may have been the very last thing that he ever understood. We believe that many make Luke's mistake by judging Palpatine's outward appearance in Return of the Jedi, and believe that Palpatine has declined since his days in Revenge of the Sith at his peak. But simply because he doesn't show his skill with the lightsaber doesn't mean that he's any weaker than he was before. In fact, the Emperor has become vastly more powerful since Revenge of the Sith. But just how much more powerful is the question that we seek the answer to today. So let's attempt to place a measuring tape between Palpatine's strength in Revenge of the Sith and connect it to the lore in Return of the Jedi, and in between Episode 6. Welcome to the Archives, Acolytes. Now, let us begin. Palpatine's power creep is something that mostly happens in the background. He began his life as an exceptionally strong Force wielder, having a natural affinity towards the ability to conceal himself in the Force. Upon his first meeting with Darth Plagueis, he was astounded to find that he could not probe into the boy's mind like a normal being, or detect his strength in the Force whatsoever like he could the Jedi. It was Palpatine's natural stealth that kept him from ever being discovered as an infant by the Jedi Order originally. Palpatine would of course go on to hone this ability, and in my opinion, be the greatest to ever use this technique of all time in all of the lore, as he was able to stand in the very same room as Grandmaster Yoda and the rest of the Jedi High Council without ever worrying about being detected. In his youth, Palpatine was strong enough in the Force to unleash his raw power in destructive ways. He even managed to slaughter his entire family when he unchained the beast that was latent within him. When his weak father pushed him too far, Palpatine snapped, and Sidious was truly born, the man that he always was beneath the mask. But it would be Darth Plagueis that would go on to show him his raw potential was significant. It was nothing in the face, however, of real knowledge in the dark side. Real power. That is the kind of power that only a Dark Lord of the Sith can understand and wield. And finally, in 32 BBY following the Naboo crisis, Palpatine and Plagueis' machinations had paid off, and the Sith senator from Naboo had been elected as the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. The night before Palpatine's acceptance speech of the position, however, he got Plagueis drunk, and the Sith Master passed out on his couch in his penthouse. It was at this very moment that the dark side itself reached out and hissed in Palpatine's ear, finally indicating that it was time. Sidious would violently wake his master by electrocuting him with Force lightning, damaging Plagueis' breathing mask very strategically, hampering his ability to fight back. He then proceeded to choke the life out of the man, while pontificating about all of his grievances against Plagueis as a master, and the joy of his victory. Finally, in the end, Plagueis was dead, and now Sidious walked out to the balcony of his penthouse suite. This is what the Plagueis novel reads. A tremor took hold of the planet, sprung from death. It unleashed itself in a powerful wave, at once burrowing deep into the world's core and radiating through its saccharine atmosphere to shake the stars themselves. At the quake's epicenter stood Sidious. One elegant hand vised at the burnished sill of an expansive translucency, a vessel filled suddenly to bursting, the Force so strong within him that he feared he may disappear into it, never to return again. But the moment didn't constitute an ending so much as a true beginning. A beginning long overdue. It was less a transformation than an intensification, a gravatic shift. A welter of voices near and far, present and from eons past, drowned his thoughts. Raised in praise, the voices proclaimed his reign and cheered the inauguration of a new order. Yellow eyes lifted to the night sky. He saw the trembling stars flare, and in the depth of his being, he felt the power of the dark side anoint him. This was the first big breakthrough of Palpatine's power, and we get to read what it feels like firsthand. The reason we bring this up is because it's apparent that by the time of the Clone Wars, that the rule of two has truly changed. It has become ritualized. 1,000 years of Sith killing their master to take the mantle had infused that very act with dark power. In a way, the passage seems to suggest that Sidious was inheriting the power of his predecessors, but whether or not that theory is true, it's clear that his power intensified exponentially after Plagueis' death. He was already quite powerful by this point, but this boost placed him well over the power of Dooku, and he was strong enough to take Dooku on as an apprentice just following. Assuming this brings us to Palpatine's baseline power, after about 10 more years of experience, Sidious lands on the same standing ground as Grandmaster Yoda by Revenge of the Sith. In just about every source that we can find, it is repeatedly stated that Sidious and Yoda are equal in terms of power. This revelation is truly astounding to us when we consider the depths of Yoda's training. We loosely calculate that he's well over 800 years of experience by this point, and this shows itself with Yoda's incredible command of the Force. He was able to absorb Dooku's lightning like it was basically nothing, and during the Battle of Coruscant, he telekinetically manipulates 2 giant separatist dropships to crash into one another, then goes and does it twice more. But then a few days later, when he's battling Sidious in the Senate, he meets his match. The first time he's hit with Sidious's lightning, the sheer strength and the speed of it completely takes him by surprise. He couldn't even sense the Force within Palpatine fast enough to react. Palpatine raised his hand slowly, but summoned the dark side at the very last moment. This threw Yoda off. It was said that Sidious was so proficient in Force lightning that he could summon it faster than he could telekinesis, so it was often quicker for him to use it rather than manipulate objects and picking them up with his mind. Force lightning is already considered an extremely advanced dark side technique since it manifests as pure hatred, but transforms it on a physical energy level. And Sidious did it so fast that not even Yoda could feel his hatred in time. During their battle with the Senate pods, the lightning was enough to blast Yoda's saber out of his hand, and after that, there was a brief moment where the Jedi Master's Terminus was nearly overwhelmed by Sidious's power. According to the novel for Revenge of the Sith, even Mace Windu's Vapad, an ability literally meant to counter the dark side, nearly broke over Palpatine's resolve and might. If it weren't for the fact that his own lightning was about to kill him faster, Sidious may have completely shattered Windu's signature skill. And we need not mention how he made absolute mockeries of Maul and Savage, or the very best duelists on the Jedi Council. Revenge of the Sith Palpatine is easily one of the strongest Force users to have ever lived. But what we've been leading to is that none of that compares to how strong he was in the next 20 years. The Jedi archives contain Sith artifacts and holocrons that the Jedi were unable to destroy. Knowledge deemed so dangerous that it had to be kept among them. With access to all of this, along with troves of knowledge pointing to other Sith locations, Sidious was able to spend his spare time pursuing even more knowledge in the dark side, which is what Plagueis had always taught him had true power. It wasn't just a matter of growing stronger with time. Palpatine was throwing himself deeply into the study of all things that was denied him under Plagueis. No longer was he forced to hide his ambitions from a master or from the public and the Republic itself. He did not have to hide who he was, and he could collect whatever ancient lore he needed, using the endless resources of the Empire. He even went to Korriban to learn straight from the spirits of the dead, though this didn't exactly go well for him. Without anything impeding his study, besides a busy schedule as the Emperor, Sidious grew above and beyond what was previously ever thought possible. If he was Yoda's equal on Coruscant, he was vastly superior by the time of the Galactic Civil War, and in canon, he used the power of the Sith Shrine beneath the Jedi Temple to tear knowledge right out of the Force itself. Even though the Force tried to resist him, he managed to peer into it, and this is how he learned that Luke was Vader's son. Furthermore, we know that he also managed to open a small window into the world between worlds. He did this in Rebels, unleashing a dark-side alchemical flame, attempting to stop Ahsoka Tano and Ezra Bridger. This kind of esoteric knowledge speaks to the extent of his arcane abilities at this point. He had become a Sith sorcerer on par with the Ancients, denying himself nothing, grabbing every bit of information the Force attempted to keep from him. He would even track down and discover the secret to essence transfer, a power completely thought lost. In Legends, he would demonstrate his incredible power against Galen Merrick, proving just how refined his lightning had become, and he was now able to mold it into shapes, surrounding himself with shields in order to protect against all kinds of damage. This was an application of the ability not thought possible. He likely knew kinetite, and could cause objects to explode on impact. One of the best accounts of his power comes from Luke, who would have lasting health issues after being on the end of Sidious's lightning. Sidious could fly with telekinesis. He did this while simultaneously concentrating on keeping his lightning shield active. We know, of course, these are all video game feats, but they still stand somewhat. According to Dark Empire, though, before his defeat he was said to have become so powerful that Sidious had become a dark side nexus itself, and was threatening to tear through space and time utilizing the Force Storm technique, a technique that he nearly mastered. It would have made him the only one Typically in the lore, Sith of sufficient strength can create Force nexuses through experimentation or dark side rituals, but Darth Sidious literally became one himself, just like Darth Nihilus. The reason he looked so weak in Return of the Jedi was due to his mortal flesh. The dark side ravages the body, it saps it of all life and energy. Palpatine was using heavy dark rituals to keep himself vitalized until he could transfer his essence into a brand new host body. But his power in the Force was so great that it was literally breaking down his very body. So while he was physically frail and required the use of a cane, he remained a nexus of dark power. So all in all, the power gap between Revenge of the Sith Palpatine and Return of the Jedi Emperor Palpatine is actually a considerable one. Even if Yoda wanted to come out of retirement from Dagobah and aid Luke, he had officially become outclassed by the Dark Lord. And unlike most power systems, the Force often cannot be quantified in numbers or percentages. But that's where we want to invite you guys to talk about it. If you had to guess just how much power Sidious had gained, what would you say based on what we talked about today? But anyway, my friends, had you ever wondered if Sidious was weaker on the second Death Star? And if so, did this video change your mind? Or do you believe that his ultimate form is in Revenge of the Sith, or some other time period? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much guys for joining us in the archives today, and may the Force be with you.